Have you ever stopped to think about what it would be like to live in a house built without modern tools, relying only on ancient techniques and skills that date back millennia? Imagine yourself in the heart of Scandinavia, in the harsh cold of the Viking lands, where the winds cut through the skin and snow covers everything around you. The Vikings, known for their raids and epic battles, were also masters at building resilient homes adapted to the extreme climate. But the big question is, how did they manage to build such sturdy houses without the tools we use today? How could simple wood and human ingenuity be enough to create structures that lasted for centuries? In today's video, we'll explore how the Vikings built their homes without the help of modern tools, using only natural materials and skills passed down through generations. We'll take a close look at the building process, understand the materials they used, and even see how every detail of their homes was closely connected to the environment in which they lived. Stay until the end to discover the secrets behind Viking house construction and how these techniques can teach us more about resilience, creativity, and adaptation. After all, what can we learn from them to face the challenges of today's world? To understand how the Vikings built their homes, it's essential to start with the context in which they lived. Scandinavia, the homeland of the Vikings, is a region that has always been marked by immense natural challenges. Imagine long winters, with snow covering everything around you and icy winds cutting through the skin. The geography of the region, with its dense forests, mountains, and coastline, created a hostile environment for anyone trying to settle there. But at the same time, these very elements provided abundant resources for those who knew how to use them. The climate of Scandinavia was one of the biggest challenges for the Vikings. In winter, temperatures could drop drastically, and the snow made the environment even more difficult. During the summer, the days were long, with the midnight sun illuminating the nights, but the heat also required solutions to keep the interior of the homes comfortable. The warmth inside the houses was vital, as life outdoors during winter was almost unsustainable, with hunting and fishing limited by the snow. In addition, Scandinavia was a land the Vikings had to master to ensure their survival. While the sea offered a vast network of trade routes and expeditions, the land demanded more of their ability to adapt. They became masters in the art of dealing with the harsh terrain, making the most of the natural resources around them. Wood, for example, was one of the most abundant raw materials, allowing them to build solid and durable houses adapted to the local conditions. The Vikings were a society where community and resilience were at the heart of daily life. Their homes weren't just shelters from the cold, but also centers of family and communal life. In the longhouses, the wooden structure became the meeting point for all family activities, from resting to grand celebrations, and, of course, times of war and hunting. The home wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a symbol of stability and survival. In this challenging context, Viking homes had to be more than just functional. They had to be resilient, adapted to the climate, and at the same time, provide a space for the community life that the Vikings cherished so much. Now, let's explore how they used the natural resources available to them to build these incredible homes, starting with the main raw material, wood. Now that we understand the environment in which the Vikings lived, let's dive into the process of building their homes. Although today we have an abundance of modern tools and materials at our disposal, the Vikings were limited to natural resources and simple tools, but with impressive creativity and skill. Materials used. Wood was undoubtedly the most commonly used material in Viking house construction. Scandinavia is rich in pine, oak, and birch forests, and wood was used for everything from the house structure to furniture and household items. The Vikings were experts at cutting, shaping, and working with wood precisely, creating pieces that often fit perfectly together, without the need for nails or other forms of modern fastening. In addition to wood, other materials were used complementarily. For the walls, for example, they used clay, straw, and even moss, which were applied in the cracks of the wooden structures to improve insulation. For the roof, straw, grass, and even clay were used to create an effective covering against the cold and snow. The use of natural materials, such as straw, also helped keep the interior of the homes warmer during the harsh winters of the region. Building the structures. Viking houses were built with a basic wooden frame, where oak beams formed the skeleton of the construction. Walls were erected around this frame, and then covered with layers of straw or clay. For foundations, they often used stones or logs buried in the ground to ensure stability, especially on more uneven terrain. A hallmark of Viking architecture were the longhouses, large houses that could accommodate multiple families or large groups. These houses consisted of a large rectangular hall, where the space was shared by all family members. Inside the longhouse, there was a large fireplace in the center used to heat the space and cook, as well as serve as a meeting point during the long winter nights. The roof of the longhouses was traditionally slanted to prevent snow accumulation and ensure rainwater drained easily. The covering was made of materials like straw, moss, and even wood, arranged to create an effective barrier against the elements. The roof wasn't just about protection. It also played a crucial role in the thermal insulation of the homes. Building techniques. The Vikings were masters of construction techniques that involved the precise fitting of wooden pieces. They used simple tools such as axes, wooden saws, and stone hammers, but their skill in working with wood was exceptional. Often, the wooden beams were fitted together in a way that didn't require nails, using techniques like the box and tenon joint, which became one of the cornerstones of medieval construction. Assembling the longhouses was a collective task. Families and communities would come together to help build the houses, with everyone playing a crucial role. Building a Viking house wasn't just the task of a master craftsman, but a joint effort that reinforced social bonds and collaboration within the community. Viking houses were designed not only to withstand the relentless climate of Scandinavia, but also to meet the specific needs of a warrior and agricultural society. Every element of the house had a clear purpose, reflecting the priorities of Viking life. Community space and privacy. Unlike modern houses, which are divided into rooms with distinct functions, Viking houses were spacious and multifunctional. The typical longhouse had a large open hall that served as the heart of the home. In this hall, family members, or even multiple families, would sleep, eat, work, and gather for leisure or ceremonies. The simple layout reflected the communal nature of Viking society, where the concept of family and social group was highly valued. Privacy, as we understand it today, was not a priority for the Vikings. Instead, the focus was on coexistence and sharing space. However, within this large hall, there were different areas reserved for specific functions, such as the central fireplace, where people cooked and warmed themselves. Around the fireplace, there could be benches or simple beds, with fur curtains or rudimentary fabrics creating a visual division between spaces. Additionally, although the design was simple, its efficiency was impressive. The houses were built to maximize the use of space, with furniture and everyday objects arranged to facilitate daily coexistence. The kitchen, for example, was located near the fireplace to ensure the heat could be used in meal preparation. The fireplace, the heart of Viking life. The fireplace, located at the center of the house, played a fundamental role. It was the main source of heat and light during the winter months, and it also served to cook and heat food. In a society where the climate was extreme, keeping the house warm was a matter of survival. Therefore, the fireplace was much more than a place to prepare food. It was a meeting point, a place for family interaction and protection against the cold. Viking fireplaces were simple but effective. They were made of stone or brick and fueled with wood, the most abundant resource in the region. Moreover, many houses had a rudimentary ventilation system made from logs and holes in the roof to allow smoke from the fireplace to dissipate outside the house. This ventilation system was also crucial for the health of the inhabitants, as it prevented the buildup of smoke inside the house, which could be harmful to their health. The roof, protection against the cold and snow. The roof of Viking houses was a striking feature of their architecture, designed to withstand the harsh climatic conditions of Scandinavia. The slant of the roof, as previously mentioned, prevented snow accumulation, allowing it to slide off the house. The covering was made from materials such as straw, moss, or wood, arranged to provide maximum protection against the cold. These natural materials were advantageous not only because of their availability, but also due to their insulating properties. Moss, for example, has an excellent ability to retain heat, which helped keep the house warm. The use of natural materials also reflected the Vikings' deep connection with the nature around them, making sustainable use of the resources available to them. The house as a reflection of Viking identity. In addition to being a functional and resilient shelter, the Viking house was also an expression of identity. Each house reflected the culture and values of the Viking community. Design elements, such as Nordic symbols and craftsmanship, were often incorporated into the walls and furniture, creating a space that not only met daily needs, but also celebrated Viking mythology and traditions. Viking houses were, in many ways, a reflection of the society they lived in, resilient, practical, and connected to nature. Although simple in structure, they possessed a unique beauty, resulting from the combination of functionality and symbolism, adapted to the challenging environment of Scandinavia. Now that we understand the design and functionality of Viking houses, it's time to dive into the building techniques used to construct these impressive structures. Although the Vikings didn't have modern tools, this did not stop them from creating durable and well-adapted homes. On the contrary, they developed exceptional skills with the tools and materials available to them, and their building techniques were as innovative as they were efficient. Viking tools. The Vikings did not possess the sophisticated metal tools we use today, but this didn't prevent them from creating durable structures. They used simple yet effective tools, mainly made from iron, bone, stone, and wood. Among the most important tools were axes, which are used to cut trees and carve wood. The Viking axe, in particular, was a multifunctional tool used for both construction work and hunting or defense. Viking axes had large, sharp blades, perfect for cutting through sturdy trees, and were often used with a technique known as the short-handled axe, giving the builder greater control and precision. In addition to axes, the Vikings also used wooden saws to cut pieces into specific sizes and shapes, stone scrapers to smooth the wood, and stone hammers to fit the wood pieces together. Although these tools were rudimentary compared to those we use today, the Viking skill in using them was remarkable. The process of carving, cutting, and fitting wood precisely was an art passed down from generation to generation, and the quality of the constructions reflects this skill. Building techniques, joints, and unions. One of the main innovations of the Vikings in house construction was the use of wood joint techniques. They did not use nails or screws, as we do today. Instead, they used wooden joints, such as the box and tenon technique, where the ends of the wood pieces were cut so they fit perfectly into each other. This method created an extremely strong and durable union without the need for nails. To ensure the structures were even more resistant, the Vikings often used ropes and animal hides to reinforce the joints between the wood pieces. This increased the durability of the houses and helped them withstand the pressures caused by strong winds and heavy snow. Another interesting aspect is the construction of foundations. On more uneven terrain, the Vikings used large stones or tree trunks to create a solid base, ensuring that the house structure was stable, even in the challenging conditions of Scandinavian soil. This foundation process was also a community effort, with members of the community participating in digging, transporting, and positioning the stones or trunks. The role of the community in construction. Although the Vikings were known for their individual skills, building the houses was a collective effort. Building a longhouse was not the task of a single man. It was an activity that involved the entire community. The work of cutting wood, transporting pieces, and assembling the structure was done by everyone, and the Vikings knew that collaboration was essential for the success of the project. Furthermore, longhouses were often built modularly, with families or groups contributing their own sections to the house. The idea that a house is a reflection of the community was present in every aspect of the construction, reinforcing the social bonds between members of the tribe or clan. Adaptation to the environment. Each Viking house was adapted to the land and climate of the region where it was located. In areas of difficult access, such as mountains or remote islands, houses were built to make the most of the natural resources available. In places where the soil was more sandy, for example, the construction of stone foundations was essential to ensure stability. In other regions, the Vikings opted for lower roofs and coverings made of straw or moss to withstand the weight of the snow. Additionally, Viking houses were designed to resist strong winds, which were a constant in the Scandinavian climate. The slanted roofs and walls reinforced with clay or straw helped minimize the damage caused by storms. Now that we have explored how Viking houses were built, let's take it a step further and look at life inside these structures. Longhouses were not just places of shelter, but also the heart of daily Viking life. They were the setting for everyday activities, celebrations, and family moments. The simple layout of the Viking house did not mean that life inside it lacked comfort or complexity. On the contrary, it reflected the organization and essential values of Viking society. The living space. The layout of the Viking longhouses had a clear purpose: to maximize the available space for family and community activities. As mentioned earlier, longhouses were spacious, and the central area was occupied by a large hearth. Around it, family members gathered, not only to stay warm during the harsh winters, but also to cook, work, and often sleep. The hearth served not only as a source of heat, but also as a place for socializing. Although privacy wasn't a priority, this didn't mean that people lived in complete disarray. Inside the longhouse, families usually stayed in specific areas around the hearth, with curtains made from animal pelts or rudimentary fabrics dividing the spaces. These dividers were simple but effective, creating a sense of separation, even if not permanent. Cooking and food. The kitchen was one of the central elements of life in Viking homes. Food was prepared over the hearth, and the environment was saturated with smoke, which made the hearth an essential part of family dynamics. The food consumed by the Vikings was simple but nutritious, mainly consisting of what they could hunt, fish, or grow. Game meat, fish, vegetables, and grains were common on the menu, and preserving food through methods like smoking and salting was crucial to endure the long winters. In addition to food, the preparation of clothing and other essential items for survival also took place inside the longhouses. Viking women were responsible for activities like spinning wool, weaving fabric, and sewing clothes, while men often used the space to repair their tools or make weapons and wooden utensils. Rituals and traditions. Life in Viking homes was also full of rituals and traditions, which were practiced both inside the longhouses and in dedicated spaces outside of them. Religious and worship ceremonies, such as honors to the Norse gods, were performed inside or around the house. The presence of mythological figures and religious symbols was always present, whether in talismans, carved figures, or other artifacts. The worship of gods like Odin and Thor, as well as rituals related to death and the passage to the afterlife, played a key role in the daily life of the Vikings. Seasonal celebrations were also marked by large festivities inside the longhouses, especially in the winter, when the long, dark nights created the perfect setting for social gatherings. On these occasions, stories were told, music and dances were performed, and families gathered to strengthen social bonds. Although Viking houses may seem simple at first glance, their design and construction methods had a significant impact on subsequent architecture and construction principles that continued to evolve over the centuries. The building techniques and materials used by the Vikings influenced, in some way, the construction practices in medieval Europe and beyond. The influence on medieval house design. Viking longhouses, with their open space design and efficient use of natural resources, served as a model for many of the houses and villages in medieval Europe. The use of wood and natural materials continued to be a central feature of construction in the Middle Ages, especially in areas of Scandinavia, where the Vikings had left their legacy. The technique of fitting wood precisely without the use of nails, perfected by the Vikings, was also adopted by other European cultures, and their woodworking practices influenced the architecture of regions such as Britain and Germany. While the use of nails and other metal tools became more common over time, the principle of building durably and adapting to the environment remained unchanged. Preservation and rediscovery of Viking houses. Today, Viking houses are studied and preserved in archaeological sites, and there's a growing appreciation of this legacy in the context of historical architecture. Many museums and cultural interpretation centers around the world recreate Viking longhouses using authentic materials, allowing new generations to see up close how these houses were built and how the Vikings lived. However, the true importance of Viking houses goes beyond aesthetics or historical curiosity. They represent the human ability to adapt to harsh environments and build resilient communities based on cooperation and the intelligent use of natural resources. Sustainable architecture and the Viking legacy. Today, when sustainability and eco-friendly construction are more important than ever, the legacy of Viking houses takes on new significance. The way the Vikings used local and natural materials, without resorting to destructive technique for the environment, is a prime example of sustainable architecture. The use of wood from local trees, the utilization of natural resources for thermal insulation, and waste-free construction are principles that can and should be reclaimed in modern architecture.